Jim. He's dead.
Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Improv Autopsy. I'm your host, Stephen Cadwell, and this is Part 2 of my interview with improvisational actor and clown practitioner Phil Geurin. This episode may seem like it ends rather abruptly, but that's only because Phil had somewhere else he needed to be, and I tend to run long. If I'm able to, I will corner Phil in the wild and have him finish the questions he didn't have time to answer, so you have that to look forward to. Right now, enjoy Part 2 of Phil Geurin's Improv Autopsy. What would you say would be the hardest fail that you've experienced or witnessed? So it doesn't have to be something you've experienced, but maybe something you witnessed.
Oh, man. Well, this is kind of both. This isn't, God, am I going to throw some old friends under a bus from a long time ago? I'll just leave them nameless. But I saw this show, and it was the best show I had ever seen. And it was a group of improvisers, and they did a commedia show. A commedia, which is the Italian mask-style theater, inspired improv. And they did the best show I'd ever seen. They, I didn't know who they were. I just stumbled into this show. I don't remember why I was there. It was after a group I did or something like that. It was almost an empty audience, just me and them. And there were these two twins, and not the Brazel twins who I worked with in the past, a different group of twins. And one of them bent over to pick something up off the ground. And the other one was walking backwards, kind of pretending to be an old man. And he intentionally fell onto that guy. And then the other one began to stand up, and he did a back roll. One did a back roll off of the other, and they both landed on their feet.
Wow.
And it was impossible. I don't know how to describe what I saw, because someone fell over the back of someone else while they were back to back. One rolled over, and then the other one stood up, and then they both jumped into the air and landed on their feet. And it was crazy. And I was like, what was that? And they worked in all these wild little lotsies, which is the word for a little game or gimmick that you use in an improvised work. And they did all these cute little physical comedy acts and an otherwise very believable, nice story. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. So I talked to them afterward, and I learned their show, and when are you next playing? And I found out when they were playing, and I invited 4 of my friends. And then we went to watch the show, and it was as if then it was the worst show I had ever seen in my entire life. It involved someone getting stuck up their anus with a stick, a sharpened stick, not a fun thing. It was a scary, torture-y, terrible scene, and it was the worst thing I'd ever seen. And my friends looked at me this was the best thing you've ever seen. And it was night and day. I had never seen a group do something so beautiful and then something so horrible back to back. And it was a different genre. I mean, it was completely different. All the same players, night and day, a different act. And it was just oh my God. So I felt like I both witnessed the worst thing I'd ever seen and had messed up because I brought my friends to this show and was put my name on it. I was this is the best thing you'll have ever seen. I can't believe it. And that was how that went. And, that's just how improv goes sometimes. I don't know if I saw the best thing. I don't know if I just saw their best day, and then all the rest of the times it was the worst thing. Or if they always do the best thing and I just one day saw the worst thing, or if they had an off day. I have no idea, but it was wild.
It was still commedia the next time?
It was commedia. Well, was it commedia? It was such a disaster that I didn't know what to make of it anymore. Because they weren't in mask. They weren't actually in mask, but they introduced themselves as a commedia show, and I could see all of these old 1600s Italian characters come to life and do lotsies. And then the next show, they still introduced themselves as the same group, but then suddenly it was just a bad version of Saw,
And did that come from? Well, so where did it go wrong? Was it a suggestion that led to the man with the pointy stick being up someone's bum, or was that their own invention?
I don't remember. I just remember how it ended. And how uninspired it felt while it was happening.
I can't imagine that being uninspired.
I know. Yeah.
So, Phil, you're in a scene, and you've been endowed as a guy that has a little man with a really sharp stick up his butt.
Yeah.
How do you redeem that? Do you just keep sipping your margarita and poking yourself in the eye with a straw?
I feel like delight is the solution. So if someone endows me as having a sharp stick up my butt, the only solution, that's so dark that I need to kind of bring it to positive, right? And so to me, I have to counteract that darkness with positivity. And so what a fun justification to be like, if they're like, you know, even if someone's like, "Ooh, you like that? Oh, you're not so good, not so tough now, are you?" I'll be like, "En contraire, mon ami." You know, like, this is the experience of a lifetime. Death is the only great adventure. I'll never tell you the codes. You know, like, on some level, I have to bring it to that world in order for an audience to feel okay with watching it.
Yeah. See, it all comes back around. No visible signs of pain.
That's true. That's true.
Maybe she also saw that same show, and that's where that came from. Was no, I mean literally.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Although I did once see an amazing genius improviser we were doing these like pitches for like shows, and he cleared the stage, and then he sort of took a cart and was like very kind of scuttling along, like moving this cart move forward, and he would just kind of like, and then he goes, and he goes, "Welcome to torture porn," or something like that. And it was so horrifying and so funny because we didn't have to see any of it. He just like introduced it, and it was so much like his slow, because he had this cart and you could tell he had all these horrifying instruments on it, you know? And God, it'll stick with me forever. I can't remember who did it. I do remember where it was. It was at a pizza place. But it was like the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen.
Pizza place, like a Pizza Hut sort of a...
Yeah, it wasn't a chain, but it was a pizza place that they did. I think it might have been a student rehearsal now that I think about it. But yeah, it was at a pizza place.
See, there's got to be a Venn diagram of pizza places and improv as well, because I've talked to people that are like, yeah, we performed above a Pizza Hut. I'm like, what? And then like more than one group has been like, yeah, we were performing above pizza, or maybe it was a Wendy's. And so there's like this diagram of food and improv, restaurants and improv as well.
There's an essay in there.
Yeah.
For sure.
You perform wherever you can, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What about any moments you can think of, other than obviously the little man with the pointed stick, where you wondered, did this just get real? Are we still improvising, or is someone having like a breakthrough of a different kind right now?
Oh, that's interesting. I feel like I often, when I'm teaching classes, it's funny, I can often, like, I'll ask, like, was that a real moment where you just realized that you were this? And they'll be like, yeah. So I kind of think I rarely don't know what level they're talking on, show 1 or show 2, if you're familiar with that concept. Show 1 is the fake stuff you're seeing, you know, the characters who are being played, the world that they're pretending to be in. And then show 2 is the performer who's being messed with, or the performer who's kind of pulling the rug out from the other person. You know, many times people will give a laugh just because someone says no to the other improviser, and because they like to see someone be squashed for a moment, you know. But then that's sort of like a trap a little bit, because then some improvisers will learn to say no to stuff because they'll get that one laugh, but then the rest of the scene is much harder and they kind of won't know why. But I feel like I often know whether they're talking on show 1 or show 2, and rarely am I like, ooh, which level is it? I have definitely seen times where I couldn't tell if a player was uncomfortable doing a thing, and then you have to be like, you know, like, oh, is this okay? Is it not okay? You know, I definitely seen players do stuff that made each other uncomfortable, and I was like, are they on board or not? I need to see, as an audience member, like, is it okay? Is it not? Yeah.
What advice do you give them, or what do you tell your students about that kind of those moments?
So, God, I have a cacophony of teachers who are arguing in my head right now. I'm thinking of, like, I remember Jill Bernard once told me, like, if someone endows you as a stripper, like, make it in a way that you have fun. So, like, if they're like, you have to strip and you don't want to do it, then, like, maybe I'll just cry and do it. You know, like, how can I do it in a way that makes me enjoy it? Or maybe I'll do a great job. Or maybe, like, I'll do such a good job that the SWAT team will come and save me, right? Or whatever the context is. So the first one is, if you can put yourself in a world that's fun, do it. But the most fundamental thing I say, especially in an improv context, is time out is your best friend. You can always say time out. It sort of gives you this beautiful permission to be like, time out, is that what you really wanted? Did you say spiders? Did you say spider eggs in my eyes? And then they're like, yeah, that's what I said. And you're like, okay, time in, and then you can do stuff with it, and the audience will get to see your joy or not joy with it, and then they can follow along the adventure with you. So, like, time out, you can always ask to back up if you're truly uncomfortable. Like, no one wants to see you be uncomfortable. Yeah. So, time out is your best friend, is the easiest and thing to do. But if you want to find a way out, and someone's trying to get you to do something that makes you actually personally uncomfortable, then I either do the justification game. You just say, I know what's going on. You're trying to get me to drop my library books so that you can turn them in. Like, you just sort of label what they're doing as an intention, and then you might find that it's fun again. And then the last one is, you can always, like, sort of give yourself a helmet if they're trying to poke you in the face or whatever. Or, if you're comfortable with them, play a weird game of chicken. Whatever that version is, right?
I love reframing it, like you said, with the timeout, or even as the character, reframing it and putting it in a context where you are comfortable. Mm-hmm. I think that's great. Because my default, I haven't taught in a little while, but when I would teach students, I would just tell them, you can always just walk off stage if you're, uncomfortable. You can die. Yeah. You can die and then become an angel, float away, whatever. Like, you don't have to, if someone's really making you uncomfortable and you're really uncomfortable, you can leave. And I do still think that's true depends on where your lines are, right? No, you shouldn't have to cross lines in improv. It's not about that. You don't have to cross any moral, ethical lines that you may have drawn for yourself. It's about having fun. But I love the idea of, if you can time out and make it fun, do that. That's going to be better for everybody.
Right. There was a show that I saw. It was called First Date by Rebecca Stoller. God, I can't get, her name is escaping me. It was in Vancouver, or she's from Vancouver, and I saw it in Calgary, Canada. And I remember she would say that she would do timeout. She would, like, interact with an audience member. And I used to do a lot of shows where I would interact with audience members. And they would do wild stuff. Audience members will occasionally really shock you. If you do enough audience, like, full-length audience interaction shows, you will not screen quite right. And they will shock you. And she would just do timeout and be like, what's going on? And then they'll be like, yeah, I said a weird thing. She's doing a first date with someone on the audience as a clown character, right? And so she'll be like, why are you acting so weird? And they'll be like, well, I didn't think it was weird. And she'll be like, I think it's weird. Like, she's like, maybe what you want to do, like, let's back up and let's, tell me about your family or something, like, you're trying to be so cool, but, like, I already like you, just tell me who you are and I'll like you. It's like, so if they're acting too tough, right? Then she'll be like, whoa, what's all this tough stuff? And then back up and, like, let them, like, she would help them be loved to a degree. Yeah. And so, similarly, I used to do a show called The Droids You're Looking For. And it was a Star Wars-based show. And me and my great former student, now life co-improviser, Sean Fisher, he and I did this show with this one audience member who, like, we gave him a lightsaber. We made him the protagonist. We said, like, you're a Jedi, choose between good and evil, all that stuff. And then we handed him a lightsaber, and he just immediately slashed us. Like, killed his mentor instantly. Like, it was too fast for us to, like, dodge or block or anything. Just The moment he had the lightsaber, he put his hands around it, and he was just like, Gah! And he just killed his mentor. And it was like, we were shocked, right? We'd never seen that in all of our years. And so then, like, I came in as, like, his love interest, and he killed me! And then, like, we brought in, like, 2 cute aliens, and he killed both of them! And then we brought in his enemy, and he killed him, too! He just killed everyone. And then we were like, he killed every character we created for him. And so then, brilliant Sean Fisher, who now is in Austria and teaches there and is a part of the English Lovers, which is, as far as I can tell, one of the best improv teams there is, with one of my favorite improvisers, Jacob Bannigan. Sean Fisher came on as the ghost of his mentor because he had killed everyone. And then he was like, and then he tried to kill him, and Sean was like, no, you can't kill me. I'm already dead. You're alone now to deal with your choices. And all we can do is think about it. And then he tried to kill him again, but he couldn't. And it was just like, no, I'm not even here. Think about everyone you've killed. You know, and so then he had to deal with the choices he made, and finally we could, like, level with him and get him to be a piece. That was a beautiful disaster also. We had a runaway Sith.
And that audience member was Ryan Johnson.
I don't get this joke because I don't know who that is.
Didn't he? Am I getting the name wrong? Didn't he do the middle director of the middle Star Wars prequel?
Oh, probably. I am just like not a person who knows about this. Yep, Knives Out.
Yeah.
Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Yes. A friend of mine calls it the least Jedi because he hates it so much. So
Hey, my rule is you got to rewrite any movie you don't like. So it's true.
I'm sure he has, but I love that. It's a great rule.
I have. Yeah. I think they just shouldn't have killed Darth Maul. He should have just come back vengefully, and then Anakin should have had a person to potentially torture. The Jedi Council would have been against it. Anakin Skywalker would have tortured someone, and then the Jedi Council would have cast him out, but then because he had information, he could have saved Princess Amidala, and then you have a person who's perfectly poised for the next movie because he's been kicked out by the Jedi, he defeats them all by himself, he's very powerful, and he's okay with torture because he knows he gets results, which is how, of course, A New Hope begins, which is with Darth Vader torturing someone.
Yes.
And so, like, makes perfect sense. Story's good.
See, this is why improvisers make good writers, because justification. You're justifying. You're looking back at the things that exist. And you're like, how do I justify those things? And
Yep.
I think you pretty much answered then one of the other questions I have on here, which is about worst audience interaction. And I wasn't even thinking in terms of, because the theater that I came from in Orlando is very audience centric, but more in just the interaction for the gets, not necessarily in bringing someone on stage and doing a whole thing with them. Although there is a there's a scene that in their book, or a game in their book, that Kayla really wants to try, called Sitcom, where you bring an audience member on stage and they are the Kramer or the Steve Urkel, and they have one of two lines they can say, and then the whole thing of the game is just you're setting them up to say that line, and then the audience always erupts in laughter when they say whatever the line is.
That game was the primordial game that created the Droids Are Looking For show.
Oh, nice.
Like, that game was like, oh, I love playing with audience members. Like, that's when I realized I had a special affinity for playing with audience members. I found them sometimes easier to play with than new improvisers, and more fun to play with because the audience just wants them to succeed so much. And it's a beautiful, beautiful game, and totally inspired me 100%.
Have you seen Hipprov yet? It's Colin Mockery's show with the hypnotist.
No.
So we're in Michigan, but we drove down to Ohio to see it. And if you get a chance, I would say it's not really improv, but it's fascinating on so many levels. They bring like 20 people down on stage, and the hypnotist does this thing for the first half of the show where they narrow it down to 4 or 5 people that are the improv troupe that Colin is going to do improv with.
Cool.
And they're hypnotized, and he does improv with them than for the rest of the show, and it was. There's so much of that, like really wanting them to succeed, and then just kind of their raw honesty and some of the things that they bring to it that are so unexpected. And he just hypnotized them to be super relaxed and not nervous and whatever else. It's absolutely fascinating and terrifying all at the same time. And a little bit of, I mean, it's not true improv in some ways, but it is. It's in the family.
Totally. Strangely enough, I have done a show like this.
Have
before. Yeah, I had. There was a time where I read, you know me, I read a few books on hypnotism and experimented with hypnosis stuff, and in particular was working on what kind of improv is possible with hypnosis. And so I did work with some non-improvisers and then some improvisers, and was curious if they would have a different experience when hypnotized. And did some improv and had them play some stuff, and pretty much noticed that they weren't any better of an improviser, but afterward they would say that it was far more visceral of an experience. They felt like they really were there and they could really see it, more so than when they were playing improv. I thought that was very interesting. Yeah. But the experiment for me was, yeah, they can play improv, but they can't, create any differently than they otherwise could. They can't be more, I would say, natural than they otherwise can. They're not suddenly a much better actor, was also my experience. I was curious if what were the limits of it, given that to a large degree I think that actors are just self-hypnotists. They just convince themselves that they're in this state. And if you study a lot of the methodologies, they're just like hypnotic methodologies, right? You're visualizing where you are, you're having kind of a dream and to get yourself into an emotional state. A lot of the same techniques are used. And so I experimented with that, and I'm delighted to see someone make a good show of it, because I gave it a shot and I was like, this is hard.
What was your experience then with the people that you said you did some with people who were not improvisers as well? Mm-hmm. What was that like?
So, I would meet with people. I at one point I put an ad out on Craigslist. This was back when Craigslist was kind of the way you could do that. It was before any of the other marketplaces. And I just put an ad out. I was like, hey, I'll meet you at this place. I do hypnotism. I'm practicing. Here's what it is. Here's what it isn't. Here's what you can expect. Just let me know what you're trying to achieve. We can do positive hallucinations, negative hallucinations, positive perceptions, blah, blah, blah. And we'll see if you're hypnotizable or not. And so I would do that. And then I would say, if you're interested, I was thinking about putting people into these kind of what did I call them at the time? Humans in these dramatic scenes, and then allow you to be these characters and see what you thought of it and if it was easy or hard. And so I would do that, and then notice that I was like, it's about the same as if you expected a random person to go up and try to be an improviser. I was like, it's about the same.
So what I thought was interesting, and with more knowledge, with the knowledge you have, maybe you can confirm or deny some of these things that we thought. So the very first thing he did after he got the 4, so I think it was 4, maybe it was 5, 4 or 5, but he narrowed it down from 20. They had all these chairs up there, and he was doing some rudimentary stuff to find out, I think, who could be, who is faking it, who, whatever, and then narrowed it down to whoever he felt for whatever reason. And there was one guy that stayed through all of it that I thought for sure was going to get eliminated because he seemed too eager. But then the first thing he had them do was, he's like, okay, you're on a date with Colin. And they'd get Ware from the audience, and it'd be like, and I was like, for the rest, or after the show we were talking, we're like, was that to imbue affinity for Colin up front that they carried with them for the rest of the show so that they wouldn't feel negative about anything that Colin did and get on that bent? Because we did see it resurface at one point. Someone did not really a callback, but was kind of a callback. It was like, yeah, because we went on that date together or something like that.
That's so funny.
And then Kayla had read up on it, and she said that one of the things the hypnotist said, or that they said together as they were workshopping, was they found that there were definitely limits to what they could have the people do, that they would be very single-minded. So, and then we saw that reflected in, the show we saw, they did a sci-fi thing, and someone was the science officer, and that translated into her brain as bacteria. So the reason for everything was bacteria, regardless of what it was. When they asked her, she was like, oh yes, it's the bacteria.
I love it. That's so good.
Yeah, and that's, I mean, in some level, it's what you were saying, like holding on to your stuff. It's like, yeah, her thing was bacteria, and she was not.
That's her deal. She's going to do it.
Letting it go.
And, I think that's kind of good. And she has extra permission to do weird stuff because she's hypnotized, right?
Yeah.
So to a degree, it's funny just to be like, what is this person's deal? And like, you're on stage and you're holding to something that works, and you're just going to use that. And like, that's what it's great. It's working. Yeah. Perfect. My guess is, my understanding of it is like, sure, it will put you in a more positive experience than if you were like, now he's your teacher and being really mean to you or something like that. That's like a harder situation. I think also it's probably the exact same stuff you would have for taking any audience member and letting them succeed on stage, right? It's hard to be a character right out the gate. It's easier to be yourself for audience members. So if you can just have them be their best self on stage and have it go well, they develop a good relationship with you as a performer. And they're like, oh, wow, this person's really trying to help me succeed. Yeah. Right? So if you bring them on stage and say all you have to say is one of two things, just say your name and say, I'm a cool guy. And then you set them up in environments where if they say the words, I'm a cool guy, and then the audience laughs, like they're like, oh, wow, this person's really taking care of me. So you never leave them alone. You're always kind of welcoming them on. You do all but hold their hand, right? But you make them the champion. You have the audience applaud them. You do all these things. And I would just say that similar for any kind of hypnotic induction, you also need to think of the relationship between the hypnotist and the performer, or the stage person, and any person on stage that's like there's a relationship being developed. So probably they would just start with the most likely to be successful, easiest game, especially since my understanding is that you get deeper as you progress. Your hypnotic state deepens as a part, I believe, in the relationship deepening, right? Because you trust them more, right? Like, oh, that went well, so probably so will the next thing. So if it were me, I would start with the slam dunk. This is going to work every time. All you have to do is say your name and say, wow, you look cool. And then the audience will laugh and think it's very charming. And then they'll also get to know you before you have to say like, I'm Darth Vader and I'm here to make a drawing with my red lightsaber because I'm alone. Like that's hard for a person to do. They're like, are people going to think I'm weird? Instead, you can just do the normal thing because there is something going on in the state of hypnosis, but like to a large degree, people won't do stuff that they wouldn't do. Yeah. Like at some point they'll stop themselves. They'll say, I don't want to do that. Right. So it's like, you're welcoming them along just like any other performer who's on stage.
Yeah. So my takeaways so far from this are that improv is basically just mass hypnosis of an audience, and sixth graders are already there.
Yes. That's it. That's all there is.
Okay, I want to switch gears a little bit. So moving on then to my Proustian questionnaire. Phil, how do you get into the proper headspace to play?
I move around like a weirdo. So I think the show you got to see was probably Grandpa Phil Does a Bedtime Musical.
Yes.
Or maybe you got to see me be the team captain for one of the theater sports shows, I believe. Maybe. Those were the two things I was doing at OSA.
We may have seen both.
Cool. So, that's a duo where I play all the characters and Alex Engelberg, the accompanist, plays all the keys. And so it's like a Disney musical. And, before that show, I was just kind of like walking around on my hands and feet, kind of going like, blah, 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 and like pacing around and like kind of dancing. And I drink a ton of water. And, if I'm playing with somebody else, and other than Alex, who I was playing with, I like to like chat with them and just kind of joke with them. For another show that I do called Fan Friction here in Seattle with another improviser, Chris Erlinson. Fan Friction is a duo wherein we get two male characters who totally could have done it from like an actual fiction. So we do an actual fan fiction, but we make it smut. And so before that show, we like are basically peas in a pod from the moment we arrive at the theater. Like we kind of march in together, and then we're like, I think the camera should go here, and then the other one's like, yeah, totally. And then one person will be like, I think we should go warm up with the other group, and we'll be like, yeah, we should. And then we kind of march over there, and we just kind of march around together in like kind of like the two agents from the Matrix. We're just kind of like one creature as much as we can. And it's funny, people mention it. They're like, whoa, you guys are like really in sync. And it's just how we are for that duo, you know? And so then we kind of march around together and blah, blah, blah. So like, that to me are the ideals. You know, if you're doing a show if I'm doing a show kind of with an accompanist, then like we might play music together and chat, but like we want to kind of be in a mutual playful headspace. I tend not to play a lot of improv before I go on stage too much. I might do some scene starters, just 3-line scenes, just a little bit to get like, okay, yeah, we can do scenes. But as much as possible, I want to be in a kind of playful, liminal state where I'm like ready to like kind of be wild, but also really synced up if it's a duo. And then if it's a group, yeah, you want to just be like playing a game like My Grandmother's Footsteps or Red Light, Green Light, or, you know, something like tag, you know, just something kind of fun so that everyone's in the spirit of having fun and maybe messing with each other and, yeah, play.
Awesome.
So those are my 3 answers, each different circumstance.
No, that makes sense. Do you have, and if so, what is your favorite your favorite ask?
My favorite thing to say to an audience is to try and get them to boo me. Like, I'll be like, you don't know who I am. Don't let me tell you what to do. Everyone say boo. They all go boo, you know, because I think that is fun. And everyone's always trying to get the audience to applaud, and there's so many other fun sounds to make. So I think that's the way you want to start, is to really get them to feel alive and get them to do something that they kind of already want to do. And I think that's like being a good hypnotist, is to like get a good hypnotic relationship, is to kind of tell them something that they're probably already doing. In the beginning of Grandpa Phil, I come out and I say, settle down, children, settle down, please, which is my way of basically getting them to yelling, right? They all go like, ah! Like every time the audience starts to applaud like crazy when I tell them to settle down. So I think like opposite action is a really powerful tool for audiences. And then my favorite get, if I don't know what else to say and like I'm doing some kind of open scene, I'll just be like, what is this? And I'll kind of like reach for stuff. For a Shakespeare show, we'll ask for your favorite weather. Like, what's a kind of weather that's rare or wild? What's like that's a good one. I think that's fun because it sort of invokes the gods in a certain way that's very Shakespearean. Yeah. And then when we work it in and there's a snowstorm or a flood or or just a very beautiful day out, like it really inspires everyone in a certain way, in a very human way. And then none of those are quite gets except for maybe that last one. So maybe I'll stay there.
Yeah, that works. Do you have a least favorite suggestion?
Oh, interesting. I feel like the one that's so funny is pineapple. But I know that's what everyone always says. But I kind of like it for that reason, because it's like the most, if someone says, give me a random suggestion, they'll just say pineapple and it's really funny. And I kind of find it charming, even though I know some improvisers kind of roll their eyes at it. I kind of like it. It's like, oh, they really said what they were really thinking of as kind of a random thing, because it's such a, like I often say, do the obvious thing. And that's the obvious random thing, and they're not trying to be special, really. They're just saying a random thing that came to mind. And I really love that. What's something that I don't like? I feel like something like Dildo's hard if it's not a blue show, because I feel like my audience is already divided. Yeah. I want my audience to be of one mind. And if someone yells dildo, then some people are going to like it and some people aren't, and that makes it tough. And so that one's tricky for me because I don't want to divide my audience. So maybe that's my most common one that I'm always like, ooh, this is always so tough. And I still don't feel like I found the right answer when I get someone yells out dildo. I think I'll just say like, I know what you're up to today. And then the audience laughs, and then I get another one.
Yeah.
And I say, you're going to have a fun night, and then it's like, fine, I'm still keeping them kind of unified, and they're not having this different experience. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you've sort of answered then the follow-up to that, which is what's your favorite way to burn a suggestion that doesn't inspire you?
Oh, yeah. My favorite way to burn one is to suggest it. So, like, for example, when we do fan friction, we know we've already done, like, Spock and Captain Kirk. So we'll just say, give us 2 men from your favorite fiction who totally could have done it. For example, we've done Kirk and Spock. We've done Harry Potter and Draco. We've done, we just list what we've done. And that A, gives them examples of things we like. And B, prevents them from saying it without saying, oh, we already did that one, right? Like, because then that makes it like we have an inside joke, and I don't like that. I want to get ahead of them, and I want us to be in it together. And probably if they did say Harry and Draco, that's a great suggestion, and I don't want to punish them for it. So I want to get ahead of them and just say, for example, these ones we've already done.
Yeah.
Yeah. But the other way is, especially when I'm like looking for an audience to play with, I'll just say, and this is my favorite get. If I'm looking for an audience member who I want to bring up and do a full scene with, if I didn't already screen them ahead of time, which I actually recommend is talking to them before the show starts, because if you need them for a whole scene, but I'll just talk to someone. I'll say, what's your name, sir? And if they yell their name too powerfully, like with too much chutzpah or whatever, they're like, Roger! I'm like, Roger, that's a cool name, Roger. What's your name? And I just kind of, I just say whatever I think about it. I'll be like, that's cool. And then I just get a couple names. Roger, you having a good night tonight? Yeah, heck yeah. And then I move on, right? So I burn it in a way that hopefully isn't too obvious. And I'm searching for someone who won't go like, Dimitri. Then like Dimitri doesn't want to be on stage. He's afraid of me, So I want to find someone who's just like, my name's Kyle. And then I'll be like, Kyle? Are you here with anyone tonight, Kyle? And they'll be like, yeah, I'm here with my lovely wife. And I'm like, okay, I want Kyle, right? Like, he's confident. He's not trying to prove anything. He's, complimenting other people around him. That's my guy. Kyle, would you like to come up on stage and play with me? I would love to play with you, Kyle. And then here we go. So I think my favorite actual get is, what is your name?
I love the burning the suggestion that way as well. The former artistic director down in Orlando at the theater, he was magical at doing. So if someone would say pineapple for him and he didn't want it, so he'd be like, what's just something random? Pineapple. He's like, yeah, just like that, just like pineapple. What's something like that?
That's so good. I love that.
Yeah,
because it solves all those problems. It says it's good. It doesn't take it.
Yeah,
and it reacts to it. So it says, give me more, and it says, yeah, just like that. That's so smart. Yeah. That's so smart. I hope I remember to steal that.
Yeah, he's so good at it. You've kind of dipped your toes into the next question as well. You keep doing, which is awesome, which is, what do you look for in an audience volunteer?
Oh, yeah. All those things. Can they say their name confidently, but not too confidently? Do they seem like they want to go on stage? The other thing I'll do is I'll walk to the side while I talk to them. Do they follow me with their eyes? Like, and that's even who I pick. So if I go like, maybe I'd like to chat with someone. Whoever doesn't look at me, I don't want to talk to them. And then whoever is like, me, I may not want them either. I might, but if it's too much, I'm like, wrong reason. I don't want to let someone kind of embarrass themselves. And if they are too eager, it's not always good. So I'll look for who's just watching me. Kind of like curious or ready to be picked. And that's the person who I'll get. So I feel like walking sideways and kind of going, who wants to chat with me? And they'll kind of self-select. They'll just kind of look at me and be like, maybe I'll like to chat. They don't need to chat, but they're open to it. And I'll be like, what's your name? And then that's a great way to begin vetting the audience as I start to try to investigate them.
Yeah, I love that. When I worked at the theme parks, we were told, pick someone that has a loud shirt on, because if they wore that this morning, they want the attention. Yeah. Which I think is, works at the theme park, but not always when you're on stage.
Yeah. Yeah, at a theme park you want big, especially if it's one of those big outdoor theaters. I feel like in those places, yeah, you want like the biggest because subtle things can get lost. But yeah, for indoors, I don't know. I haven't tried it, to be honest. I haven't tried the loudest shirt. I don't know what would happen. I feel like I would be nervous to get them.
I'd say stick with the eyes because, yeah, I would. I'm making no guarantees about the. So this goes to your show 1, show 2 sort of thing. But Phil, can you describe your onstage persona? How is onstage Phil different than offstage Phil?
Keith would say dress for the stage the way you would dress for a date, and I feel kind of similarly. It's like I am myself, but I am choosing to be my most ready, energetic, and ready to play self. I am close to a clown persona, and I do sometimes really play into the clown persona, especially if I'm like, I don't know, I not that long ago, right before I went on stage, like I learned that a former partner of mine who like was the one who got away, kind of. I learned like my friend accidentally slipped that she had just gotten engaged, and she, and I was like, it was like right before I went on stage, and so like that was hard, right? Like it was like, wow, thank God I'm a professional, yeah. And then I needed to go on stage for Rocky Horror Picture Show, like an improvised Rocky Horror Picture Show, right? So I needed to be like the Dr. Frankenfurter, like the most charismatic on person, right? And so, yeah, I just did like some backstage, what would you do to get yourself hyped, right? Like, you close your eyes, you visualize, whatever you need to get you into this kind of like whatever it was, like sexy, self-confident state so that when you go on stage, you can be that kind of character that the show demands. I could not go on stage as like a weepy, aching-hearted person. It was just not time for that.
Yeah.
And so in the same way, that requires finding the other parts of me for that moment, so that I could mourn in the time for mourning, to quote Frank Herbert's Dune. But, so that was what that show required. And so, yeah, it's you choose to be the part of yourself who's the most ready to have fun and to be entertained and, to look at something interesting and go, this is more shiny than I expected. Interesting. And, like kind of your clown personality, who is you, but also is maybe the side of you that the audience is ready to see.
Yeah. What inspires you on stage?
Oh, I feel like almost to know it would be for me to like almost make it work less well. Is that true? It's like anytime anyone else is having a good time, I'm probably interested, as long as they're also at least curious if I like it as well. Like if they're like, oh, I just did that, do you think that's cool? And if I'm like, no, that's not cool, then they're like, oh, you don't think it's cool? Interesting. Like as long as they're including me in the experience and have a sense of both love and non-neediness, dare I say, or maybe self-acceptance, I feel pretty inspired. I feel inspired by story a lot. So, even you could just hear from my examples, like the couple who's arguing and then suddenly the statue crumbles. Like, that's so interesting. I feel so inspired by a statue just crumbling for no reason, and it feels like maybe it's an act of God, but maybe it's not. I feel like things like that are so like, what? Are inspiring, but what makes that? I don't know. It's like something that feels possible, but curious, only barely possible. I feel like the very barely possible is really interesting. And so like the Venn diagram of like, has this sentence ever been uttered before is really interesting. And I think I'm really inspired by things that, make sense. Like, like almost like of course in hindsight. But how do you find those? What's the recipe? Yeah, but it's like those are the things that do it. And I think if you just create something that you like and you pops out of your brain because it truly makes sense to you, that is only barely possible, that's so good. Because that is what reincorporating all of the past offers. So I feel very inspired by those things.
Awesome. Is there anything that shuts you down or takes you out of it on stage?
Anything that divides my audience makes me nervous. So politics, if it divides my audience, makes me nervous. things that are too intense experientially.
Yeah.
Things that are unethical can divide my audience, or on the edge of ethical. If it like feels good and it was earned, and it's like, ooh, this is kind of naughty, like, uh-oh, like, is this okay? Is this bad? I don't know. Like, that's fun, as long as you're bringing the audience along with you on the journey. If it's unearned, then I don't like it, because I don't know how to take care of my audience, and that makes me nervous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In your estimation, what makes a good scene partner?
Almost anyone who's having fun. As long as they're having fun and they want me to have fun with them, I'm probably going to have a good time. Anyone who's there to play, anyone who's being earnest, if they're like, I'm not comfortable with that. Like an audience member, it's like, yeah, great. Let's not do that. If they're like, I'm really scared, I don't want to put my hand in the box. Like, what a great answer if I'm like, put your hand in the box. And they're like, I don't think I should. Actually, you're scary, but I'm more afraid of putting my hand in the box. Like, what a beautiful thing to say. So, I don't know. It's so many things are inspiring. Anything that's just in the spirit of good play and good fun, I think I like. Even if someone's like saying no to every offer I have, but they're kind of like doing it like, what are you going to do now? Then it's like, I don't know, that's kind of fun.
So as long as they're playful.
I think so. Or at least even if it's like hidden in the really good acting, as long as I can see the spirit of like, here's my art, here's what I'm giving you.
Yeah.
As long as they're giving me gifts and they kind of like what they're doing, I think I will too.
Is there any advice that you would give your younger self?
Yeah, I think I would say you can always make one group into two groups, and there's always room. And if you don't like something, it's okay to walk away and then just start doing another thing, and invite people is better than like trying to stick it out and make it work. I feel like oftentimes I would try to do that and I would just create more pain. I think, and I know that's kind of a darker set of advice, but I think it would be mine. And then I think I would also say, play with people you like a lot. Just invite people to play with you. It's great. It's fun. And it gets you places.
I think good advice, both. What is your favorite type of character to play?
I like to play naughty characters, I think. I recently had my Chris Erlinson, my duo partner, he told me, he said, Phil, you have a beautiful capacity to surprise. And, I never really thought about that. Like, he's like, you just know, like, how to make things become wild and fun. And I think it's because Clint and Buck Vrazzle taught me how to be really impish and naughty and how to, like, make good trouble happen. And I feel like that's something that I bring to the table. What was the question? I forgot. I got caught up in my own self-applause.
Yeah, your favorite type of character to play.
Okay. Yeah, I think I like to play naughty characters. And, you always can change everything about your character that the audience hasn't seen yet. So why not choose to be the person who today they have the crazy idea of doing something wild? That's plausible, but great.
That's barely possible.
Mm-hmm.
If you could do a scene with anyone living, who would it be?
Jacob Bannigan. I haven't played with him before. He's an amazing improviser from England who I've only seen like play online. I feel so inspired by him, and he like doesn't know who I am. So like I feel like that would be an opportunity. We did exchange emails once, but that was kind of it. And Jacob Bannigan. He did a show called Chess with Death or something like that. A Game of Death. I think it was A Game of Death that's online that you can just go find. And it's amazing. It's so beautiful. And all the work I've seen him do is just so cool. Yeah. He plays on the English Lovers, I believe, still.
Nice. Let's change it up then. If you could do a scene with anyone who is no longer with us in the realm of the living, who would it be?
I would play with William Shakespeare because I'd be really curious what kind of player he would be. I mean, some of the greats have passed, right?
Yeah.
Gillis Boleyn, I don't think is alive. We lost Keith. Yeah, I feel like so many of them are still around. Keith ostensibly doesn't play much improv. I have a friend who passed. Maybe I play with him. Yeah.
Yeah. Was he an improviser? Or were they an improviser?
Kind of. Kind of. Yeah. A little bit, but not a lot. Yeah.
I have someone I used to improvise with that I would love to play with again as well. Who someday maybe, right?
Yeah.
Well, let's move to fictional. You could do improv, if you could do a scene with anyone fictional, who would it be?
Oh, God, who would be interesting to play with? The first person who came to mind of all people was Merlin from The Sword and the Stone, which is wild because I don't even remember what he was like.
The Disney version in particular, or
I think so, but I don't know why I have him in mind. I just kind of remember him doing that like pretend duel, and he felt self-confident in his choices.
Yeah.
So that seems like someone who might be fun to play with. Someone impish who gets into trouble a lot. I mean, all the Winnie the Pooh characters have a really clear deal, and that would make them fun to play with. I feel like Tigger might be a little too much for me. I'm not sure. I can't remember how chill or not chill he was. Winnie the Pooh might have a little bit too low of energy. I feel like Eeyore might be really fun to play with if you knew he was coming. Then he'd be fun to play with.
Yeah.
I think I would love to play with Piglet on stage if he was like an audience member, because you could make him succeed and the audience would just love it if he succeeded. They would be so happy to watch Piglet succeed. None of these players have quite the capacity. All these characters are they're not deep enough to like have the well of a true improviser though, quite. I feel like Tom Sawyer or his companion. I feel like both of those characters feel like people who I'd want to play improv with. They're like impish but earnest. Huckleberry Finn might be really earnest and therefore really fun to play with.
Yeah. I feel like the danger there would be with them, and I also think for Bugs Bunny the same thing. Be like, okay, does Bugs have to win? Does Bugs Bunny have to win?
Yes.
Or can he actually improvise with me?
That's why Huck Finn would be more fun to play with than Tom Sawyer, I think. Tom Sawyer would be trying to be clever, and Huck Finn would probably go along with it and be self-assured.
Now I want to see both just to find out. That is it for this interview with Phil Geurin. You can find Phil teaching at Jet City Improv in Seattle or touring the globe spreading joy. If he's near you, you should go see him or take a class. Find me on Patreon for some fun bonus content, even at the free level. Everything is available at the free level, in fact. Thanks for listening, and wherever you are, I hope you find some improv this week.